Good evening, Trump's family. Welcome back to my channel. Have a good night, everyone, and God bless you. Alright, without further ado, let's get into the news. And as elections to hold the midterm elections still continue to drag on in states like Arizona and Nevada, Kari Lake's election is still hanging into balance right now. She is very confident that she is going to win. She has not given up, and she refuses to give up, which tells you a lot about her character. And of course, the character of the mainstream Republicans out there, people like Mitch McConnell, who have refused to even get involved in any of these races to help Republicans win. They'd much rather stay in the minority than actually be able to leave the country. They make money by lists, regardless of being in the minority or not, because they're able to fundraise it. That's why they were so upset when Roe v. Wade was overturned, because it was one of their biggest fundraising issues, just like the border wall. They didn't want to fund a border wall because if they fix the border means they can't raise money. These people are the enemy of the party. We cannot move forward as America first if we continue to allow people like Mitch McConnell, Kevin McCarthy, etc., etc. You know the names continue to drag this party down because of their effectiveness of able to lead. People like Kari Lake scare the crap out of them. So let's go and take a look what we have here coming to us from Wayne Dupree. This is Kari Lake bombshell update on the Arizona election. We'll have many eating crow apps, right? Says wow. What's happening in Arizona is completely in total embarrassment. But this is the new normal for elections for the ballot harvesting Democrats, but not for long, at least not in Arizona, because it looks like they're about to get a new magnet governor who will put an end to that nonsense. Kari Lake is still waiting to be crowned the winner 3 absurd days after the election. We're officially a banana republic. And once again, the laughingstock of the world. Kari said there was a bombshell update coming and she shared a video from election expert Gene. Everyone, listen to this, Gina says. Back until the adjudication's done. They have to do that. And we want them to do that. Because as we learned in the audit process, when they didn't do that in 2020, we could not reconcile what was adjudicated and what was not. It's a good thing that they're doing it. It's a bad thing that they continue to refuse to work through the night to give the people the results of this election. Okay, so really quick, do you know adjudication? People are worried how many ballots are currently in adjudication. And what does that mean? So they're not giving us the number, and we've asked the legal team to get a number from them today. Adjudication is when some team of a Republican or Democrat are going to look at your ballot and try to determine what you meant to do when you cast that vote. The less routes that go to adjudication, the better it is for us. The reports I'm getting is that a lot of them are a result of the judge races in Maricopa County. We had a large judicial retention, but there's room for mischief when things go into adjudication. So we're working on that number. We're gonna get that for you sometime today. So really quick, Gina? Yes or no? Does 4 out of 4 include voting in the primary? Yes. Wow. So you're trying to tell me 350,000 people that voted in the August primary haven't had their vote tabulated yet? Yes. Oh, this thing's about to get real interesting. Stay right there. Okay, folks, there you go. And it says the bombshell in layman's terms. Layman explanation for the bombshell is that there's significantly more Republican ballots than that we expect to have still yet to be counted, hopefully within the next 24 hours. These are reliable in red votes. Our confidence level has risen. That's right out of Kari Lake's war rooms, which she had just what we just read there. And well, all the DeSantis 2024 people never Trump heirs, establishment and media pile on the trash Trump. Kari Lake is standing shoulder to shoulder with him. Western Journal reported though the final midterm election results for Arizona still are not in the gubernatorial battle between Kari Lake and Katie Hobbs as tight, while the U.S. Senate race between Blake Masters and incumbent Mark Kelly is still fairly close. And Lake said on Thursday, and in a radio interview, that she is sure that Republicans will win. So we'll see as these ballots continue to come in. We'll continue to keep an eye on the Arizona election. I know some mainstream media outlets have already called the race for Bart Kelly. However, with the amount of ballots out there, Blake Masters has not conceded yet. And it's waiting to see the final totals before anything is recognized. So we'll see how this turns out. So Kari Lake once again, remaining to be fighter in the state of Arizona. And we'll see how that turns out here in the next couple of days. And it's ludicrous. I even have to say the next couple days because we should have known back on Tuesday. And this is some big news, So I've put on my prediction. I've been going on and on about the possible red wave. I've absolutely been feeding into the hype, I'm not gonna lie. And of course, doing that comes with risk. All of a sudden, there's a good chunk of people that are angry with me. And look, I'll take responsibility. I was wrong again, just like I was in the 2020 election. It kind of comes with the territory. If you're making predictions, if you're analyzing all of the data, and it's bringing you to a conclusion, and then you're wrong, you're going to look bad. It's not going to age well, and it's especially hard nowadays. It's becoming increasingly hard to rely on polling data because of all the changes that have happened to the voting system. In particular states, Democrats have put themselves in a very favorable position. And look, I know emotions are running high and certain people are angry with me. But at the end of the day, I regret nothing. And I will change nothing. I will continue to push conservative ideas that I believe in, and I will continue to hype each and every single election season. What am I supposed to do? Doom and gloom? Change my channel name to Black Pill Politics? Absolutely not. I will continue to remain positive and continue to be a hype man, because that is what I want to do. I want to create energy, positive energy, continuing to push forward this grassroots conservative movement. That is what I will continue doing. And even following this election disappointment. Yes, it was relatively disappointment because it wasn't as big as people were expecting. I'm not going to sit here and pretend as though all is lost. I mean, people are pretending that the world is ending, that it's game over forever. There is so much positive. And in the end, Republicans won. I mean, Democrats are cheering on Twitter as if they've won the election. They didn't. And even if they win 51 seats in the Senate, which is possible and might happen now with Nevada switching or shifting, even if that's the case with the Senate, the reality is on the House vote, there was a red wave. The numbers that we were maybe they didn't transition into the seat gain that people were hoping for, because a couple states were a little bit weird. But at the end of the day, when it comes to the generic vote, Republicans won significantly. Joe Biden's woke socialist agenda is going to be halted. The end result has been achieved. And even some sober minds at CNN are starting to realize and admit that we're not going to sit here and pretend as if all is lost. A win is a win. Whether you won by 50 points, or you won by 2, a win is still a win. And so let's continue to focus on the positive here. Alright folks, so let's focus on the wins 2018 to 2022. Nancy Pelosi as House of Representative has been a total disaster. We've had to suffer through her sham January 6th garbage commission. Well, that's over. And on top of that, Democrats have had total control of Washington, and they've passed nearly $10 trillion in reckless spending over the last 2 years. That is over. So Democrats are cheering on Twitter, poking at you with their sarcastic comments. Who wears the red wave MAGA chud? What are they celebrating? Because CNN certainly doesn't seem to be celebrating. Everyone listen to this. Yeah, but I don't think those I'd be for marijuana, because when they prosecute people for marijuana, it's racially biased. We know that. That's a very good reason to legalize it. What I worry about, of course, if Republicans take over, whether it's by a small margin or a large margin, that they are, first of all, we're not going to be able to pass anything. Secondly, there'll be hearings, there'll be investigation. So investigate Hunter Biden, it'll be very toxic. Marjorie Taylor Greene, and those people will want to impeach Biden. I worry about just being very, very ugly. And I'm pretty sure that's gonna be predictable. Okay folks, look, the 2020 election was very frustrating, very emotional. At one point, people got over it, and they started moving to the next thing. At one point, you got to come to terms with reality, and you got to work with what you got. Well, Republicans now control the House of Representatives, meaning it's time for investigations, it's time for committees, it's time for accountability. You don't even need the Senate to do any of that. The House of Representatives has been weaponized against conservatives. For the past 4 years, flipping the House was the most important end-game goal here. And that's exactly what happened. And to say that there was no red wave, I think, is totally unfair. As of right now, look at the results. Generic national House vote, Republicans 51 won and 80% of votes, Democrats 46 won and 20 on. That is 5.5 million more votes for Republicans than it is for Democrats. You know, that's the number that we've been focused on the most. The Senate races are the most risky. At the end of the day, there's a lot of people who have very weird voting rights. Abbott says people who want to split power, like in 2018, for instance, Democrats were hoping for this massive blue wave. They won the House, but they didn't win the Senate. Republicans retain the Senate in that race. At the end of the day, there's a lot of good here. Republicans made amazing gains with Hispanic voters. For instance, that's a big W. Another win is new voters. Looking at the exit poll data for first-time voters, 12% said this was their first time they had ever voted in a midterm. They voted 53% for Republicans and 45% for Democrats, meaning there is a significant enthusiasm gap when it comes to registering new voters or getting people to the polls. For the first time ever, those people are voting for Republicans. Maybe there wasn't a red wave in Pennsylvania. The state shifted left, and it's not even necessarily Philadelphia. There's a lot of people that are targeting Philadelphia specifically as being the reason John Fetterman won the state, but if you look at the map in total, almost every single county, including rural working-class counties, shifted left. Mehmet Oz did not appeal to the Trump base in Pennsylvania. And so there was no red wave in PA, but there was a red wave in New York State. We're going to pretend like it's all doom and gloom when Lee Zeldin was competitive in the governor's race in New York State. Kathy Hotel with 52.5% of the vote. Lee Zeldin with 47.1%. Republicans flipped House seats, leaves Ildon won counties that Republicans haven't won for decades. Quickly going back to Florida, red wave sweeps in supermajorities in Florida legislature. In the end, Democrats in the Florida legislature didn't even come close. Republicans secured not only a solid majority in the Florida House of Representatives, in the Florida Senate on Tuesday, they want a supermajority in both chambers. And that gives GOP leaders unfettered control of the legislative process with the largest supermajorities in decades. Certain Senate races suck. Dr. Oz lost to a zombie. Okay, it happened. It sucks. We don't know why it happened. It could be that he was a bad candidate. It could be fortification. It could be the GOP establishment not spending money effectively enough and not targeting the right races. It could be the lack of Donald Trump's presence now pulling the working class vote in Pennsylvania rural areas. It sucks, but it happened. But I guess what I'm trying to say here is that I think it's unfair to categorize this election as a total failure. When in the generic national House vote, Republicans led by 5 points. There's a lot to work with here. Republicans performed admirably with new voters, with Hispanic voters, with women voters. The question is, where do you focus now based on the exit poll data that we have? Republicans underperformed as independents? Why is that the case? Republicans underperformed in working class rural areas in the Rust Belt? Why is that the case? Republicans overperformed in Nevada, in Florida, even in Wisconsin. Ron Johnson did incredibly well. The state shifted right, maybe not in the governor's race, but in the Senate race, Wisconsin shifted rightward, and I mean, New York. Just look at this, a massive rightward shift in New York that almost made the state competitive. Even Joe Pinion did pretty well against Chuck Schumer. There's a lot to analyze here. There's a lot to celebrate, frankly. And at the end of the day, the number one mission, the most important goal, the end game was to stop Joe Biden's legislative disaster from continuing, and that goal was achieved. It wasn't the glorious battle victory that people were hoping for with the roars and the celebrations in the end planting that flag in the ground, but it was still a win nonetheless. And there's a lot to work with here. We didn't get it right. I didn't get it right. I was wrong. Frankly, everyone was wrong. Democrats, independents, election experts, polling institutions. The Real Clear Politics average was predicting 54 seats in the Senate for Republicans. At one point, the betting odds were all predicting the same thing. I and everybody else who got this election wrong. We're just following the data. The data once again failed us. But the way I think about it, the way I always think about it, is not to point fingers and blame Donald Trump and cause infighting and in-party mutiny. Unless that mutiny is targeted towards Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy. It's not to complain and to whine and argue, it's to keep pushing this message, to keep playing my hype man role, to keep fighting for ideals that are important to me, and to figure out how to get that message to land with independents and to land with common sense, regular folk. And so that is exactly what I'm going to keep doing. I'm not going to feed into the doomer culture, because if everyone did that, then after 2020, no one would even show up to vote. You know, the saying goes, Rome wasn't conquered in one day. You don't give up on the war because you lost one battle. Maybe 2022 wasn't the red tsunami we were looking for. But the goal is now to immediately disregard that and focus on how you can make 2020 for that massive red tidal wave tsunami, and that is exactly what I'm going to keep doing, and hopefully I'm not the only one. Thank you very much. WWG1WGA. Give me your thoughts below.